We're into the final video now for child development for hub leaders in SA. What we're going to do here is really just recap on the previous videos. I hope that there's been a few small insights for you in information that's been provided. We've looked at some very broad themes relating to a critical perspective on child development. We've looked at some of the research and theories that have been developed in relation to child development, and some of the broad programmatic responses that various nations have attempted. We've looked at deconstructing the frameworks of the Australian Early Development Census as a way to look at how can we use this conceptual framework in a given context. And then we followed up with looking at some perspectives from neuroscience and some perspectives on psychology, particularly around the importance of mediating influences for children, the importance of symbolic learning and development, the importance of play. So now in this final video, really just want to bring us back to the problem that was raised in the first video around what do we do with all of this often very complex and detailed theory when what we want to do is provide a meaningful developmental program for children and something which is accessible to them and their families. So I've really just thought that the way to go about this is to look at some basic principles that we can draw from theory and from the social and cultural context that we're in terms of guiding the design and delivery of any work we do in child development. I guess the first thing really is to make sure that we're doing something which is safe and appropriate. And we do that by looking at the national standards and our guiding resources. This includes the Early Development Census, the Early Years Learning Framework, and the national quality standards that are in place in Australian contexts. Beyond that, it's well worthwhile to explore learning systems that pursue a comprehensive development of children. So some of the examples of this are multiple intelligences, cognitive enrichment advantage. There's several out there. It's worth looking around at some of the models and some of the activities related to those models to see if you can get a sense that this is something that would work for children in your context. And then developing activities that correlate to systems that you've accepted and adopted, or in terms of honouring people who have a great deal of intuitive knowledge and practical wisdom in this regard, developing activities that match your intuitive perspective to working with children. I think it's important to recognise that you don't have to have a theoretical background in order to do this work really well. There are countless ideas available around specific activities once you have a clear sense, either intuitively or through research, in relation to the areas that you could be focusing on in working with children. I think it's really important to provide space and time for children to engage in open-ended play. This is where a child development space can have really limitless possibility for children's development. Rather than selecting a framework and trying to fit everything to that framework, you're breaking down the frame of reference and letting children find what is going to be most useful for their development at certain stages of the program if you give them space for open-ended play. It's really important in any child development program to find ways to engage parents and caregivers in what you're doing. Create opportunities for parents to learn and for ways for the child development processes to continue at home. There are various ways of doing this, and the way to do it in your context will rely on the readiness of the parents, their understanding of child focus and child learning and development, and really on their own capability for learning as well, based on whatever life experience they've had. Throughout any kind of program of this nature, it's critically important to be sensitive to the needs and interests of individual children and families, listening deeply and learning from families, and letting a child development program be a space for mutual learning. There's a lot to be gained out of that approach. And through it all, being aware of your own perspectives and your own abilities, and being open to constant learning and development within yourself is going to mean that the development program remains dynamic, remains responsive, and is a great place for children to come and play and learn. I hope that these videos have been helpful as a very early introduction to child development. Unfortunately, we didn't really have the scope to go into any specialist themes, any particular types of areas of development, responding to particular needs of children. There will have to be other resources that respond to that, or I'm hoping you can find specific resources that match your needs if you have those. I just want to say that I think that working for the development of children's minds is about the most important work that anyone can do. So I wish you very well in your work, and I hope that this has been a small step towards you achieving great things with children.